Hi, everyone. Welcome to Interchange. I'm Dan Jones. Thank you so very much for joining us. Lots to talk about. Of course, we're going to talk politics today and get everyone's opinion on who won the big debate, Paul Ryan or Joe Biden. We'll talk about the increasingly negative publicity being generated by the Milwaukee Police Department and whether all of it is deserved. And we'll talk about the Shorewood-Mesmer co-op football team dropping a cross off their helmets after somebody complained. All right, let me introduce our guest today. You know Kevin Fischer, former broadcast journalist, political analyst, oftentimes a fill-in host over on WISN Radio. And we have Joel McNally, longtime newspaper columnist. And of course, Gerard Randall, education consultant and local job creation expert. Denise Callaway will be back next week. Rick Horowitz will be along with commentary at the end of the show. If you like the Obama-Biden ticket, you probably thought Joe Biden won the debate Thursday night. If you like the Romney-Ryan ticket, you probably think Ryan did a better job. But if you are one of the few independents or undecideds, Kevin, would this debate have helped you make up your mind?
No, and it's because of the embarrassing, disrespectful, contemptuous performance and attitude. There you go, Joel, doing your Joe Biden imitation. The vice president looked anything but presidential, and I think it was deliberate. It was to distract people, and Democrats may have loved this style, especially after the president said last week in his abysmal performance that he was too polite. So Joe Biden comes out swinging and doesn't offer any details about a second-term agenda. All he did was attack, attack, attack. And if you are one of the undecideds, one of the independents, you are tuning into these debates because you're undecided, you want to hear a serious discussion about the issues. And while there was a lot of substance being tossed around, I think it was lost on those independents, a disproportionate number of whom are women, and I don't think really are big fans of the behavior that they witnessed. I think it does damage to the president, who now has to come out and give the two debates of his life. I think Charles Krauthammer, the columnist, nailed it. He said if you look at just the transcripts, it's a draw. If you listen to it on radio, then it's Biden. But if you watched it on TV, which most people did, obviously Paul Ryan, who was poised, he was on top of the issues, he was unflappable, he didn't let Biden get to him. He won if you watched it on TV.
Last week, even Democrats were saying, the president didn't do a very good job during his debate. This week, do you think most Democrats are saying Biden did a great job?
It's exactly what most Democrats are saying, not just Democrats either. Obviously, I have a personal position here because since I laugh at half the things that Kevin says every week, I certainly am not going to find fault in Joe Biden. I thought he has a great smile. He has a great hearty laugh. And truthfully, when you've got someone flailing around over there, ignoring and refusing to give specific answers to any questions, sometimes laughter is about the most appropriate response to that.
Every time, Joel?
But as a matter of fact, this debate, and I give a lot of credit to the moderator, Martha Raddatz, was a very substantive debate. It got into far more issues than the first debate, which got into practically no issues. It just let Romney lie all over the place. And when you talk about women, finally, the campaigns, both campaigns, had to answer the question, two Catholics on the stage, the abortion question. And Joe Biden's answer was the best, most moral answer I've ever heard to that question. He said, I'm a Catholic. I follow the teachings of the Catholic Church in my personal life on abortion, but it is absolutely wrong for me to take my personal religious beliefs and pass a law that makes everyone else follow my personal moral beliefs. And that is absolutely true. Joe Biden, Paul Ryan, being a good Catholic, would never stand for the United States of America to pass a law saying he had to follow some other religion other than what he believes. And people all over America hold different religious views on abortion, different religious views. They hold different religions. There are Jewish people, there are Muslims. We know there are Sikhs in this community now. You cannot have someone like Paul Ryan saying, I believe legislators should pass a law that reflect my religious beliefs.
Then why does Obamacare, and the Vice President lied about the Obamacare impact on Catholic churches, hospitals?
He absolutely did not.
Oh, he absolutely did.
Catholic churches do not have to pay for insurance for
Catholic
anybody.
churches do not, but Catholic hospitals, Catholic insurance companies do.
Yes, they do.
Yes, they do. Catholic insurance companies, Catholic hospitals will be responsible for making those payments. AP did a fact check, and the fact check showed that the most egregious lies were told by the vice president. And yes, they were.
Benghazi, his votes on the wars.
Whether you were talking about taxes or Libya.
You can't do this every week. You can't come in here every week and lie just like your candidates are.
Romney lied and Ryan lied. We can say your guy lied because he did.
AP's fact check showed the most egregious lies were told by the vice president. And that's in today's Milwaukee Journal. I'm just saying that's where it's at if you want to check me out. The other thing that I thought was interesting about the debate, there were 90 minutes in that debate. More than 85 times the vice president interrupted Paul Ryan before he could complete a sentence. And then the opposition wants to come back and say that he didn't get out his thoughts correctly or completely, and that's his fault. So the counterpoint to that would be, would you want Paul Ryan to be as disrespectful and demeaning as the vice president was? I don't think that's the case. What Paul Ryan did, he in fact called Paul Ryan did, and probably not correct. What the debate showed to me was that Paul Ryan put himself in a position to show that he was even-tempered, he was in command of the facts, he could convey and articulate those facts to the American people, and he was consistent.
And he was strong on fiscal policy, which we know he is, and he was very competent on foreign policy, which was the surprise. Which I think probably did surprise a lot of people. That was supposed to be
interesting. Did
Biden, I thought he was very effective when he would look in the camera and say, I am not going to mess with your Medicare, I'm not going to mess with your Social Security. I think that was a very effective
But why at the end of the debate, he looked down at his papers, he didn't look directly into the camera and speak to the American people. Go back and look at the tape of it. He didn't look at the American people, he looked down, he looked to the side. Paul Ryan, on the other hand, looked directly into the camera at the American people and made his case by asking for their vote as well.
I think it's very interesting, particularly after the first debate, that the reaction to these debates now has nothing to do with the substance of what anyone said.
Isn't that unfortunate?
That it's where they looked or how they turned.
That's right.
And in this particular case, it was Joe Biden who had a total command of the facts. It was Paul Ryan who repeatedly, when the moderator asked him for specifics time after time after time, wouldn't give them.
And she didn't ask Biden the same hard questions.
She asked him other hard questions.
And interrupted Ryan 31 times.
Here's another point I want to break out when you talk about foreign policy, which you guys mentioned. You said Ryan was great on foreign policy. Believe me, the only thing I thought was great about it was he agreed with the Obama administration on Afghanistan, on Iraq, and the real troubling point to me in this election, which doesn't ever get talked about in this stuff about how did somebody look on camera, is the fact that Paul Ryan and Romney coming out repeatedly saying, let's try to stir up another war in the Mideast. We're just getting out of two wars
that Joe Biden voted for multiple times.
Two wars that Paul Ryan voted for without funding them, and that's why we went into an enormous economic crisis. But to have the Republican Party, even on a day when the United States Embassy was being attacked and their ambassador was being killed, Paul Ryan goes out and does public press conferences attacking the American leadership.
Well, the administration is going to have to
it
answer
used
to that
be the crises,
they should have been attacked for what they did
policy
and failed to
crises
do.
the
brought
administration was
this
asked for
country-
more security and
brought this
protection in
country-
Benghazi and refused to supply it.
And Paul Ryan cut the budget and cut the security.
There has
Right.
been no budget.
Next topic. It seems like the negative publicity for the Milwaukee Police Department never, ever ends. Now comes word that 4 officers are being charged with felonies in connection with allegedly illegal strip searches of drug suspects. And the FBI announces it is going to conduct a criminal civil rights investigation into how officers handled the case of a suspect who died in the backseat of a squad car. Will these cases end up changing the Milwaukee Police Department for the better in the end? And will Chief Ed Flynn end up having to get out of his job?
I hope he does lose his job. I think it's reprehensible what's occurred in the department under his watch. And if it had just been one incident of an unfortunate nature, I'd say, well, this is something that they can get their arms around. But I think there are far too many incidents that have blown up in his face, that have blown up in the mayor's face. If the mayor is taking any responsibility for oversight of the force. And unfortunately, the response has been, we'll investigate and we'll do better the next time. But then something like a jack in the box pops up again, and each time seems to be worse than the last. I think it's been too long before they've investigated seriously those incidents of police strip searches. I think the case of the young man who died in the back seat of a squad car and did not get the attention that he deserved to get so that perhaps that death could have been prevented are all reprehensible acts. And just saying I'm sorry is not good enough, or we'll do better the next time is not good enough. The chief hasn't laid out a plan as to how he's going to reassure this community that it's not going to happen again, especially when you've got the same commanders and you've got the same plan for training police officers and supporting police officers out in the field.
Kevin, the police department, like any organization, is a microcosm of society. When you have a few officers that screw up, do you hold the guy on the top responsible for that or not?
Well, if he knew that all of these things, which by each one by itself is not enough, but when you add them all together, you have a pretty strong case that maybe this department isn't being led or managed properly and efficiently. I think it's unfortunate that you have these situations where we're now painting the police department with a wide brush. We have hung this police chief, and everyone knows that watches this show, I'm not his biggest fan, but we have hung him before there's even been a trial, internal investigations, fire and police investigation. Now we've called in the FBI. I think that we should weed out the bad apples, try them, bring all of this up for inquest if necessary, and weed it all out as we did back in the early 80s with the Ernie Lacy case. But I fear that the Milwaukee Police Department is being judged unfairly because you have a daily newspaper that does have a vendetta. They want this guy and they will do anything to get him. And in the process, we have indicted an entire department, which does have some bad apples, but I don't think we should unfairly judge the entire department, which is filled with good men and women who put on the uniform every day and put their lives on the line. I don't think that they should be sacrificed because of the actions of a few.
Ed Flynn was considered one of the brightest and the best in the country when he was brought in to change this department. Now do we suddenly say he's not good anymore?
I think some people are suddenly saying that, and I think that's wrong, because I think he is a bright, progressive police chief. And I welcomed him coming in from the outside when he came because of the Frank Jude case, because of the long, corrupt and racist activities within that department, because of the culture within that department. And clearly, in the time that he's been there, he hasn't been able to change that culture entirely. This series of incidents proves that. And it is simply things that take place, things that officers do when the suspect is African American or Latino that no white citizen in this community would ever have to face and would ever tolerate. He would be out of here immediately if that happened in the white community. But he isn't the one that did it either. It is the culture of that department. And he is a bright enough guy. He hasn't supported all of it either. I mean, he's walking this fine line. He's suspended people. At the same time, he doesn't want to prejudge officers before they've had their trials and things like that. But what I keep saying is he is a smart enough guy to know what the problem is. I welcome this outside FBI involvement and the federal involvement. One of the major changes that took place in that department took place as a result of a federal consent decree when the League of Martin challenged Police Chief Harold Breyer on hiring, promotion, assignments, obviously racist assigning and promoting and lack of hiring within the department. And I think the department, Head Flynn wasn't enough to change it all by himself. And I think this outside federal involvement could help to change it too. And I think working together, that could be exactly what this.
Well, you have two serious, major problems at work here. Number one, you've got some bad rogue cops that need, if they've done what we've read they've done, they need to be disciplined, they need to be punished, they need to pay a price. And number two, because of all the negative publicity, you have a community now that doesn't trust its police department.
Right.
And for the police department to function properly and effectively, you need the cooperation of the citizens. And if you don't have that, the police can't do their job. And I don't
that's
think
the idea that Ed Flynn brought in, community policing. The police have to be engaging with the community. They have to know the community, and the community has to know them, not just as an occupying force, but as partners to really raise up the community.
Given what has happened, I don't think Ed Flynn is capable of restoring that trust, not when they're running around gathering signatures to boot him out of here.
That's my point. When you have large numbers of pastors, the NAACP and other community-based organizations, civic groups that are now saying they no longer support him, how is he then going to have any credibility when he tries to go into the community and tout a solid relationship with the people who live there?
I think he has to build that.
I think it's too late.
I do too.
All right, next topic. Years ago, Shorewood Public High School and nearby Messmer Catholic High School joined forces to field a football team. Apparently, neither side had enough players to field a really good team. The other day, a parent reportedly complained about the cross that was part of the logo on the football helmets, and it took Shorewood about 10 seconds to make the decision, okay, we're going to get rid of the cross, change the logo. Is this an overreaction or just a common sense move in such a litigious society where it could have turned into a big separation of church and state?
Take it away, Joel.
I don't think it was a litigious question. I think it was simply a common sense question. Shorewood is a public high school. Public high schools, public education is not supposed to favor one particular religion. It's like the abortion question we were talking about before. If you are a Catholic and you're only surrounded by Catholics, you assume the whole that makes sense, that you're allowed to promote your religion. But in a public high school, we have Jewish students, we have Muslim students, we now know in this community we have Sikh students. There are lots of other religions represented, and for your football team to be going forward with the sign of one religion doesn't make sense anymore in a diverse culture. It's not you don't like religion. It is in fact that you support freedom of religion, and everyone has a right to their own religion. And a public high school, as opposed to a parochial high school, doesn't represent any one religion. I mean, it's just that simple.
This can turn into a big deal, though. Look at the thing in Brookfield that's been going on now for years, where they complain about the Elmbrook School District holding their graduation at Elmbrook Church because there was a cross hanging there. This is going all the way to the United States Supreme Court now.
This was a situation where you tried to use a one-size-fits-all attempt. You had an organization parochial school that ironically is not, its student body is not made up of all Catholics. They've got a variety of religions that are represented by the student body there. They didn't have enough students to field a good football team, and the most likely candidate for a marriage was with Shorewood,
Which had a very bad football team.
That's actually being kind.
And then together, they've made it a really good football team. I mean, they certainly made it a competitive football team. But I think where the issue came in is just as there should have been respect for the diversity in a public school, there should have been a respect for the history that Mesmer brought to the table as well. The history of its program, the history of its religious character, and that was what the students, when they designed that logo on the helmet, tried to represent. And that history that was represented for Mesmer was just either ignored or just thrown out altogether. And I think they could have figured out another way to have dealt with it. The thing is, the kids are looking at it from, I think, a good perspective. They're one team. They want to go out without this distraction. And so they've come up with something that's totally innocuous to put on the helmets, and maybe this will end a 2012.
That's innovative.
And I think there's some words that go along with it. Playoffs.
Because they're going to the playoffs.
Big thing or no big thing?
Well, they turned a nothing into a something. I
think maybe the newspaper did that.
Well, imagine that.
It shouldn't have had the kind of play that it had. I would agree.
Because
with.
for 12 years, this is bizarre to me. For 12 years, you had this marriage,
right.
a Catholic school with a public school,
right.
Coming together to play football for 12 years. And just because one person got their nose out of joint, this became a big deal. I love how these self-proclaimed champions of tolerance suddenly become intolerant when it pertains to Catholics or Christians. There's no, and you know what? This is a result of this fundamental ignorance of the concept of separation of church and state. There's a total misunderstanding about that. There's no way you could go to court and argue that this symbol was chosen because they wanted to ram this religion down other kids' throats. No way you could do that. And so now what? We're supposed to take away Mesmer's kids' religious symbols. What if
as Gerard says, many of them aren't Catholic.
Well, what if Shorewood decided to end their relationship with Mesmer and team up with a Jewish school? Would it be equally offensive to put the Star of David on?
But that's
on the
why
helmet?
you don't put the symbol of any one religion on in a public.
But the two schools, when they did come together, came together knowing what the history of each and the tenets of each were.
But brother Bob himself is not complaining.
You know, and I thought he took the right approach.
I think privately he came, but you know what? I don't see what's wrong with putting that cross on. And no one took into consideration the student who came up with the design, the students or the students' parents. They merely caved into one person who was offended.
All right, let's get back to presidential politics for just a minute. Rick Horowitz likes to say that when it comes to debates, if you're complaining about the etiquette, you know you've lost the argument. But Rick does feel some sympathy for Paul Ryan having to defend Mitt Romney's stand on all those issues. The question is, which Mitt Romney? Rick.
This time of the year when elections come around, we watch as the candidates stake out their ground. Except for one man who's so hot for the chase that he moves his positions all over the place. He's multiple Mitt, adjustable Mitt. Consistency? That doesn't matter a bit. He'll tell you whatever your crowd wants to hear. And his previous statements, they just disappear. Cut taxes on everyone, that's only fair. We'll make back the revenue. He won't say where. There are loopholes, deductions worth trillions or more. But they're secret, so how can the voters keep score? He's multiple Mitt. He's pliable Mitt. Stability? Not worth a bucket of spit. Send those aliens home. Never mind, let them stay. And where do we stand on abortion today? On health care, he hates what the other guy's done, but he'll keep all the good parts. Now, won't that be fun? And the other parts, things that he once pushed himself? Like he's never heard of them. They're stuck on the shelf. He's multiple mitt, he's flexible mitt. Sincerity, his comes inscribed counterfeit. He'll shift to the center, he'll slide to the right. He must think the rest of us aren't too bright. He's severely conservative, but that was back then. Now his etch-a-sketch fingers are twitching again. He's a moderate man, a bipartisan gent. Don't you wonder just where that old right-winger went? He's multiple mitt, ultra-flexible mitt, and whatever it takes, he considers legit. Keep your base from revolting, grab some moderates too. When he talks about victims, well, he doesn't mean you. Now, elections may come and elections may go, and a principled man has a tough row to hoe. So a little hypocrisy is hardly a sin. And Mitt's #1 principle, I want to win. Watch those multiple mitts, all those multiple mitts, saying this and not this, just as long as it fits. When it comes to dissembling, our Mitt takes the cake. He's as real as they come, if you don't mind a fake.
Well, thanks, Rick, and thank you so very much for watching. Stay warm. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.